Appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. My plan for this hour, which I'm sure will go by very fast, is I'll say a few words about um, my this work called Mediate Your Life and a little bit of the history of it for those that don't know. And I'll try to keep it somewhat brief, just a little give some overview. And then there's some folks here who are currently or have been in the training, and I'll give those folks a chance to say a few words. Um, and then maybe get some questions. So a big purpose of this time is to respond to people's questions, but also to do some maybe do some demonstration. So that's there's some challenges to doing some kind of demo work given our constraints and things like that. But I'm going to do my best to see how to do some experiential things with you all as to demonstrate. Okay, so and then answer more questions. So that's the plan. Yeah, I like to just take a moment. Maybe we could all take a moment just to kind of notice how we're doing right now. How are you as you come into this space from whatever you were doing? How's your mind doing? Your body doing? And maybe just sinking your attention a little down, grounding in the body and the earth. Hmm. What I want to say first is just what this program means to me. I've, I've been doing this work. Well, I started with nonviolent communication over 25 years ago, and then started developing this work that's now called Mediate Your Life, over 20 years ago now. And what it currently means to me is how to respond to conflict ourselves and how to support others. And I'm really liking this term now, being a guide for ourselves and a guide for others through the difficulties of conflict and challenges in the world. And I like the idea that we can frame really any challenge as a conflict of some kind that has two or more aspects to it. And that this approach is about finding a third side to the two sides, and that third side is like I think of as our consciousness, a conscious self that can bring empathy and compassion and even healing to aspects of ourself in conflict, ourself and others, and to the larger world, to others that are in conflict, but also to the larger world that's in so much conflict right now, and so much happening on these larger social, political levels and ecological levels. So how to respond to all of that with a combination of the skills that come out of the work of nonviolent communication and this mediation framework, the two sides and the third side, and then mindfulness. And I love to think about the components of nonviolent communication. It's not only about language, but it's about different levels or even like dimensions or doorways into with mindfulness that take us into different aspects of consciousness. And for actually um, a long time maybe, but much more focused recently in the last number of years is the healing work, the trauma work, and how trauma overlaps. I mean, trauma is becoming a much more like a buzzword in the world now, and every other week there's a trauma conference online somewhere, and but really just that idea that we carry that recognition that's growing, how much we carry those hurts and pain and sometimes pretty intense trauma for some of us from our younger years, and that conflict triggers that. Conflict often can bring at least elements of that up, at least sometimes. And so that conflict is an opportunity to work with that in ourselves and in our relationships. So how to navigate all that? How do we navigate those difficult, very difficult territories sometimes on these different levels? And how, if we want to help other people do that, if we want to be guides for others. And I think, and again, I love the metaphor of guide of, I think of it as just walking together on this journey up the mountain or through these difficult regions and territories, just being a guide that knows the territory somewhat and has these skills and tools and ways to orient and navigate, but that we're, kind of accompanying people and ourselves part of that journey together. And a journey that's not just for me about resolving, that's part of it, maybe getting to resolution and clarity of ways to move forward together in from some kind of conflict, but that can be also can lead to things transforming in some ways, or deeply healing and transforming and really opening up new possibilities that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the conflict. So to see conflict as something that's natural and part of life and can be dangerous and difficult, or destructive, but it can also be the pathway or the portal to really new wonderful things happening if we know how to navigate. And I found that if we only have skills, often that's not quite enough, because the fight, flight, freeze system of the brain takes over. It's really strong. It's really deep and primal and been with us for millions of years. And so that takes over very quickly, and our skills can readily disappear. But that if we have not only skills, but we have a structure to hold these conversations internally and externally, and then if we have steps to follow, so because that if we know, oh yeah, there's one step and what's the next, then we can navigate our way through, even however difficult it is. It's possible to kind of keep finding the part of us that is able to stay present, able to be in the present with our fuller capacities for connection, basically, to have our nervous systems choose to move back towards connection when the fight or flight system wants to disconnect and fight or flee or shut down. How do we, in a safe way, in a way that's still taking care of ourselves, but to find connection that's going to open up so many more possibilities for the world we want to create. So that's a bit about what's really meaningful for me about this work. It feels particularly important now, given things that are happening in the world, and I imagine will continue to unfold in more and more difficult ways, probably. But that I find this work and how it overlaps with other bodies of work, just a way to kind of, no matter how difficult, that there's a way to relate to the situation, to ourselves, to others, to what's happening. That it gives really powerful tools. So that's been my experience. And there's so much more I could say, but I think I'll just stop there and invite a few other folks that are here that have done this training work with me. So there's two training programs, or two levels of the training. One is for ourselves, like knowing how to be that guide of empathy and compassion and possibility for our own lives, navigating our own lives, and a training course that's just for that. And then another level, if you want to be helping and supporting other people, either individually, one-on-one, like a kind of coaching, or in mediating between two or more people and supporting people in that way of mediation. So mediation sometimes is a daunting word to people, and I just think it's helping people have conversations and work through conflicts together, working with like two or more people. So there's some folks that have done that training or currently doing that training, and I'll just see if any of you that are here for that would like to, yeah, say a few words, a minute or two, just sharing your experience, anything that's been particularly, yeah, valuable to you that you'd want others to know about, um, or how you've been using it in your life already, or your work, or moving towards what you want to be doing. So, just put your hand up if any of you who are here for that would like to do that. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with Hope.
Hi, I'm so glad to see you, brother. Um,
Mm,
Two things I want to say. Vivid memory of being with you pre-COVID, and you were in Nashville or I was in the Bay Area, doesn't matter. And we were as a room full of professional mediators, which I am not, but I was a NVC embryo and I wanted to learn. And I was in the seat of holding space for a conflict. And I was in like I wanted to run. I felt so inept, but I stayed present. Like my heart was pounding. I was afraid. Anyway, to hold that fear while simultaneously you whispering in my ear the steps, helping me to instill into my somatic body what I had learned intellectually. So that was a huge support and still is. It still comes back to me how significant that is. And secondly, how I use this in my life is I do body and energy work on horses. And subsequently, it involves the human guardian. I mean, because horses are mirrors. And the maps and the language that you've provided through compassion and intuitive wisdom um, helps me to navigate what I feel the horse is showing me about the human. It helps me to couch the language in a way that the person can hear it
mm,
and the horse feels seen in their job. So
mm,
I'm grateful for this work, brother. It's deeply
mm,
transformative. I use it every day, every day. Thank you
mm.
for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Hope, and for that memory. I think I do remember that moment in that workshop, and your work with horses. Yeah, is always every time I hear you talk about it, it's always so inspiring to me. And
Mhm.
people, and horses, and creating that connection. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is the language that bridges the gap.
Mm,
So here's to you and to Brother Marshall.
Brother Marshall. Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you, Hope. And Lori. Lori, good to see you.
Great to see you too, John. It's been a long time.
Mm,
Yeah, there's so much I could say. I just pulled out my file and was looking at the names of the different maps. Because what I realize is I think Marshall, there's a quote from Marshall where he says, NVC is the boat to help you cross the river. And once you get there, you can let the boat go. And I feel a little bit for me that I forget maybe the succinct names of the different maps, but it's integrated. Some of them are very well integrated. The healing and reconciliation, the internal mediation, because I'm also a parts work practitioner. The mourn, celebrate, learn. There are certain ones that I are so integrated, and they just they arrive when they need to for people that
mm,
I'm supporting in different ways. So it helps me in my own life for sure. And it gives me a foundation for how I'm showing up, that the seeds are there. And so I can pull from.
mm,
And I also want to share that there is a group of us, some of us are here now, a lot of us actually, that have continued from our teaching with you, the learning we did with you last year. And we are still a group that solidly gets together every week. And we're so dedicated to and committed to supporting each other with the maps and just with presence. So I'm celebrating all of that. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, I'll say more about for those aren't familiar yet with this idea of kind of maps and conflict to navigate conflict, but just yeah, what you shared about that, what we can integrate, it can just be spontaneous, and then when we need a little more like conscious structure to help us, but that flowing in and out of that, I love how you just said that. And also what you said about staying together, that people do often do that from these trainings, and often really long-term, deep support and connection with each other over time. And so glad you shared that. I didn't know you had a particular group for that. Oh, wow, that's great to hear. Cool.
That's a real testament to you too, John, right? From that, what we've gained from the course and how
Mm,
we want to continue that growth and learning together. So thank you.
wow, wonderful to hear. Thanks, Lori. Okay, Xuan.
Thank you, John. Yeah, in your course, what I learned is first is deepen my practice, MVC practice as a trainer candidates, and also personally is help me how to better mediate my children's conflict more
Mm,
effectively and constructively. You know, one of the most vital thing, like other people mentioned, is a map framework. Even though I had already been using MVC in my daily life, but sometimes I felt uncertain about how to move forward in children's conflict. So the MAP framework really provided a clear step-by-step the process, give me a direction, clarity. And also I learned from your class is about the self-connection and self-empathy. You know, almost every class you let us do the breath, body, and needs awareness. And also, I also learned how to apply self-empathy during the mediation process, which has really helped me as a mother
mm,
mediator. Because even though I try to sit in the third tier and remain neutral, but sometimes I still feel overwhelmed or anxious when I mediate a kid's conflict. And I also pick up a lot of techniques from your class. You know, for example, when one of my kids start to talk over, I know how to gently pull the ears to
mm,
guide the conversation back to the track. You know, if their emotions escalate, I can use emergency empathy to address their immediate their needs and feelings, and also a coaching interruption is very
mm,
helpful too. You know, not to silence everyone, but to make sure everyone, both sides, that truly being heard instead, you know, stuck in their endless back and forth. So those mediation skills really help me in my personal life, help my kids' conflicts. Um, yeah, last but not least, like I said, this course also helped me in grow as an MVC trainer candidates, give me more confidence in supporting others and refining my skills and integrating MVC consciousness into my daily life. So I truly appreciate um, your guidance and your design, your thoughtful design of this program. Thank you.
mm, mm, Thank you, Xuan, for sharing all that. Yeah, I love hearing you talk about mediating with your kids. I've told you in our classes. Yeah, I did a lot of that when my kids were younger, especially. How meaningful. You also mentioned when the skills, mediation skills. There's nine kind of core mediation skills in this work, this training, and then there's variations off that too. So there's actually more than that, but there's kind of a core 9, and you mentioned some of them particularly when we're mediating between others and supporting people in conversation. Yeah. So thank you so much, Wen. David.
Yeah, I'm part of the group that Lori mentioned with Paula and Wendy and some other folks.
Mm.
Yeah, I started working with NVC back about 25 years ago, and I don't know how long it's been now, John, since 3 or 4 years, something like that, since I've started coming to your classes, and it really sort of opened the floodgates for me. And there's for those who are new, it's great to listen to John talk about his work, but to actually see him do it, for me, it was just like a revelation. It was like, oh, okay, just the empathy. Even if I mean, all the maps are great and very helpful, but just seeing how the empathy works, and that's, you know, basically the foundation of all of this work. I think John's nodding said yes. Okay, so he agrees with that. Um, but I just wanted to mention something recently that came up, so I won't spend too much time. But my wife and I will often, wake up in the morning and we will, if one of us had a dream, we'll share the dream with the other one. And I've always felt about dreams like, well, yeah, that's interesting. And I even got into sort of some of the Gendlin type of work about, feeling the feeling that you have with the dream. And sometimes I try to work with my wife or just ask her about some of that. And it kind of went nowhere. And the other day she woke up, she'd had a dream, and I just felt this kind of relaxed presence and curiosity, and just started asking her questions. I wasn't even consciously trying to do, empathy per se, but I mean, I've done enough of this work that it just kind of filtered in, I think. And she was very she kind of really engaged with me about that, and was answering the questions, and we were kind of exploring that, and then we got kind of to the end of that, and I just said, well, is there anything in your waking life that this kind of relates to? And instantly she got it. She's, oh yes, it's about, and then she did that. So I mean, I'm just first of all kind of celebrating that, because I've always felt like dream interpretation, God, what is that all about? You have to go get a book, and then it says something that makes sense or doesn't make sense, but it's still kind of up in your head. And but this was so much fun, and it felt so good. And I felt I was really kind of using the skills, partly by training and partly by just osmosis from practice, having that presence and empathetic presence to be able to sort of navigate that. And it was so much simpler than having to figure something out and analyze it. So that was really cool.
It sounds really cool, Dave. I love that you sharing that, because the connections with the people closest to us, and I hear what you're saying, there was like a spontaneity in it that you could just kind of follow. You had skills, you had some kind of frameworks in the back of your mind, but you were just kind of going with the flow of what was unfolding in a really kind of easy, very present way. And it just kind of, one thing kept emerging into the other. And that to me, that's beautiful. How you shared that. Thank you. Yeah. All right, I see Gregory and Sam. You know what? Before Gregory and Sam, just hold on a few minutes. Or a minute or so. Let me just maybe say a few more words just related to few more things related to what people have said already, and then hear from the two of you and anyone else. And then we can get some kind of more general questions from anybody in the group as well. But since this idea of a map or maps and the skills of comp, I thought I'd just kind of give the overall framework of the maybe, and I'll tell the history quickly because it kind of gives some context. So I mentioned that I started with the work of nonviolent communication about 25 years ago. I met Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of that, and just instantly knew that my whole body knew immediately that was it. That was my life's work. And then in 2002, I started co-developing with this character named Ike Lassiter. We started developing, we called NVC mediation at the time. And that was just helping other people, like sitting with a mediator sitting with two people, helping them with a conflict. And there's this 5-step mediation model that we learned from Marshall, and we started offering this training, and then it just grew and grew over time, and then it became, what do you do to prepare people for that mediation conversation? What do you do in between sessions, maybe? And then it started to grow and grow into, how do you mediate, help people who are having internal conflicts? And we got connected to the work of internal family systems and Dick Schwartz's work, and that this big overlap between the IFS, internal family systems model of working the self working with the parts, and then the mediator working with the parts of self internally. So the idea that we have a kind of a conscious self is how I think, the conscious self that not only mediates between, like, giving empathy and supporting compassion between others, but we can have that same consciousness in us that can bring that to our own inner aspects and parts that can be in conflict. So so the work just kind of kept growing and evolving, and then it became like, how do you deal with conflicts in your own life? How do you be the mediator between yourself and another person? And at the core of that, of all of that, was always this called the 3-chair model, the 2 sides and the 3rd side, and how the observation, feeling, need, request components of NVC are always part of it, kind of no matter where you are in conflict. It's that triangle of the 3 chairs and the OFNR being brought into that conversation between the 2 sides. So now I used to say the maps. So some of you are saying maps, plural, and now I've tweaked a little bit to say there's an overall map of the territory. I think of it as a map of consciousness, actually, to use that big term, but a consciousness of human conflict, and that there are these regions and territories of that, and in each territory there's a process you can follow, some different steps depending on the process, or depending on that territory. But in all of them, again, it's this 3-chair model that is, I think, it's like the compass. So no matter where we are on that map of conflict, whether it's internal conflict or external conflict, that there's a compass that helps us kind of know where the true north is, and how to orient and how to move through the conversation of the conflict between the 2 sides. So there are 10 of those processes in this map of conflict, and then there are variations off of that too. So whether it's using it for oneself or helping other people with conflict, so there are 10 plus of those processes, and there are those 9 mediation skills. In formal mediation, there's five phases of mediation, plus a little extra as well around that. So this structure, I find having these structures are so helpful, again, with the intensity of conflict, which can overwhelm our system and overwhelm our ability to stay conscious and aware. And but with these different aspects of the approach, we can kind of find our way back, and then it's kind of this combination between what just is coming organically, fluidly from us, and using these structures to support and kind of contain and hold the conversation and navigate depending on where we are, what kind of conflict are we in. And often helps to know that, like, oh yeah, what is this conflict? What is going on? And orienting that way, using this idea of a map to navigate. So, all right, enough on that. Let me go back to Gregory and Sam, and then maybe we'll open up to some questions. Gregory.
very briefly, I I've done John's classes maybe several times now, but it's been several years since I've been, and I wanted just to share the most was what an impact it had and meaning to my life of being able to, what I really long for. It's lasted and lasted for me, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I can't recommend it enough. And that's it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Gregory. Glad you could stay long enough to share something. Thank you. Sam.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think what you were speaking to in the beginning, John, of conflict, and of course in the modern times right now, but just personally as well, reframing conflict as not something to avoid, but something to walk towards as a vehicle towards connection is quite a personal journey for me. And so this work is landing really well in support for that, and also inspiring to just hold that space when I'm interacting with other people, whether it's professionally or socially, just to have some trust in the process of the verbiage of strategies versus needs has been very powerful, just to basically lead to more connection. And certainly all the maps and content and organization of the class, the opportunity to witness your demonstrations, to have the practice groups, which are super effective. And I think one of the lasting and like most used aspects of the work is self-connection for me. And I notice myself all throughout the day just having different access points to self-connection, whether it's in conflict or celebration, and any other like human experiences that I have, but just to continue to flex and work that muscle of staying self-connected is what leads to more groundedness and less reactivity, and more an ability to stay present in the moment for all the things that are happening. So yeah, those are some key points of what I'm enjoying in this work with you.
Thank you, Sam. I want to kind of tease out one thing I heard in what you said that I feel like I've heard from others as well about a trust, kind of in doing this kind of training, that there's a confidence that develops, that kind of knowing we know how to get back into connection with ourselves, as you said, and find that third side that can hold whatever's happening internally and externally with that place of presence and empathy. But just that sense of like maybe some confidence to deal with whatever might come up in any way. And you kind of have, things that give you that. And did I hear that part right?
Yeah, you absolutely heard that part right. And actually, piggybacking on that and what David said too, this growing sense of inquiry versus reactivity. So when I hear things, there's a filter now that starts to trickle down of an assessment of like, where might this person be coming from? What might be the source of, the content that they're sharing. And ultimately it's starting to lead to more inquiry versus judgment, or like black and white assessment right away, which also just continues to lead to connection.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's kind of the training almost kind of starts a default towards more training in this particular way, maybe. I don't know if that's what you're saying, but that's kind of what, there's something about practicing in this framework, in these frameworks, that can maybe kind of habituate that sense of a new habit towards empathy, or towards kind of seeing conflict as a chance to, oh, let me shift into something more connecting. So but yeah, I also, as you were speaking, I'm not sure you were talking directly about it, but just I have found and Sam's in the current mediation and coaching training program, that I found when we have these processes, this structure, this, as well as the skills, like there is a confidence about, oh, when I hear somebody talking about a kind of conflict they're in, I know how to kind of, oh, it's this area. Oh, and I have there's a process for that, and I know the structure, and I know the way to kind of navigate through it. So I find there's a confidence that I get given when I'm working with people, that I kind of know kind of how to orient. And then within that, I can just be really fluid and flexible and just flowing. But I have these kind of ways to make sense or orient to whatever somebody's presenting as kind of the situation they're dealing with. So anyways, that reminded me, Sam. Thank you for what you shared. Okay, yeah, Katie.
A couple things. I just wanted to make a note of the time if we want to do a demonstration. Also, it's just so nice to hear everyone's voices and expressions. It really warms my heart. And I love what Lori said about, I hadn't heard it before, the river thing, getting on the boat to cross the river and then letting go of the boat. I find that in this work, all the details you just went into, like, yeah, they're important to have on hand and know, but really it's a consciousness shift, it's an awareness shift. And that I think is the most profound, impactful experience, at least in my opinion, to have that person. I think that Sam was just speaking to it too, like just the way it impacts you on this daily level. And then, you know, whether it's for yourself or for other people, you can then help other people in a certain moment, but it's just this holistic awareness, a conscious awareness that it's profound. Yeah, it's just a really profound experience to take in and live, and hopefully help other people experience that and help them want to, you know, it's like a little twinge of reminder to somebody like, oh, hey, there's this other way we can look at things and be with things and see things. And we need that in the world right now. So, yeah.
Thanks, Katie.
Applaud your work, John. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Katie. Oh yeah, so where we are on time. Yeah, I'm not sure quite how a demo is going to fit in, but I definitely like to hear if people have questions. So maybe you could see if you have a question about the program, different levels of the program, or maybe there's a situation you're wondering, how would this approach apply to this, you know, whether it's your situation or somebody else's, and then maybe I could turn that into some kind of little mini demonstration of some kind. So, but yeah, let's just kind of open it up to anybody to share. So David, that looks like your hand? Yeah.
Yeah, earlier on you mentioned the issue of trauma, and you know, I'm very interested in the subject of intergenerational trauma. And I've, you know, just heard here and there a little bit. I mean, there's one group that says, well, NVC is the way to address trauma. And I'm wondering, you know, in classes I've had with you, we haven't really gone there in terms of, I mean, not explicitly talking, okay, this is, you know, people may be bringing up traumatic issues and whatever, but I'm just wondering, with all of the emphasis on trauma that you've mentioned, is that something that you're going to start exploring more explicitly in your classes? Is there kind of a level at which, you know, in the mediation class, we talked about a mediator saying, hey, you know, if you're dealing with some of these kinds of issues, drug addiction, whatever, that's beyond my, you know, you need to see somebody else. I'm just wondering how that kind of fits in with the trauma question.
Yeah, well, I'm very intrigued, yeah, about the generational, the collective kind of pain that we carry, as well as the individual. The way I think about it really is, I mean, there are approaches like internal family systems or other approaches that are really just geared towards healing of trauma. And I'd say this approach is about conflict. That's the focus, dealing with conflict. But the conflict, as we've been talking about, can overlap and bring up some of that pain. And so really the way I think of it is, when that arises, knowing how to deal with that empathically to the parts that can come up around the pain that people carry around, that's getting activated by the conflict. and how to kind of weave that into the moving through the conflict situation. So it's not directly about trauma healing the way other modalities are just focused on that, but I do find, and it's really meaningful for me that because of the empathy, the compassion, the care that gets brought into for all parts of ourselves and others, and that is healing. And to me, that is like, that's what's healing about relating to the places of hurt in us. And so I don't know if I'm answering exactly, but for me, it's kind of something that can happen along the way, but that the focus really is on how do we deal with the conflict that's arising. Yeah. So there's some gray area there, but that's my what I'd say for the moment. Emma.
Hi. I had a question, kind of what you were saying of like bringing a conflict and wondering like what would it look like to deal with that. I'm thinking really broadly about just being in a really divided country, and it's feels beyond people having different opinions about, any controversial issue, but like fully living in different realities or like different constructions of realities. And so what does mediation look like? I mean, I can think of like two people coming to a table having it was, I don't know, even trying to sort out like who to vote for or how to approach these issues. But I'm also thinking of videos that I've seen of like town halls where people are really expressing very strong opinions that are coming from just like a very different approach to reality. So I guess it's kind of like really broad, but what does mediation kind of look like in that approach to conflict, if that makes sense?
Are you saying like what would it maybe look like in a some kind of group meeting or conversation, and two people are having a really big difference about the political differences? You mean like something like there, or working with somebody who just has that kind of conflict in their life in some way, they want to work on it?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I don't know, both are really interesting.
Well,
I guess maybe the second one, someone who's trying to like sit with a different someone coming from a different background, or especially because right now the stakes feel really high for some of these issues. Like they feel very hot button issues politically right now. And so it feels really hard to take down the temperature when you're trying to understand. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I guess like helping someone deal with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, maybe could you and I play it out a little bit just to make it some kind of experiential for folks? And if you want, you could
Sure.
role play somebody you have in mind. You could be yourself, but if you, yeah, think of maybe where you feel in a particular conflict with somebody, a person, or maybe say a little more like what scenario can you, if you were wondering how to work with it, what might it be? What's the scenario that comes
I
into your
guess I
mind?
could think of something very specific, I suppose.
Mm.
I'm from Seattle, and I just drove through northern Idaho, which has a lot of big signs and talks. And I felt a certain way driving through there, and I felt a bit of sadness of like, how is it that my neighboring state and my neighboring like a community of where I know people who live here can feel so disconnected, and I see big billboards that make big political statements that are different than how I feel, and it makes me feel a certain way, I guess, if that's specific enough for you.
Yeah, I think so. And then so maybe imagining there's somebody that kind of embodies those views. And
Yeah.
okay. And yeah, so let's just kind of thinking about the this framework of there's two sides. There's you, and and then the husband side, uh And then there's the part of us that can hold both sides. I think that part of us that is conscious and aware and able to direct empathy towards, and really that can hold the big frame of how we're all kind of connected. So how about let's start where just very briefly working with you, the chair, so to speak. Like there's the you chair, there's the other chair, and then there's the third chair that's kind of holding both, right? So if we just focus on the you part, like what's happening in you. And so you were just saying some of your observations. So then I find it's just helpful just to track through these components one at a time, like one layer at a time. And so as you're maybe you talked about what you saw in the sign, right? You observed this, what was being said on these signs, and then maybe things you've heard your husband say, and so things you've heard or seen in your mind right now, and then maybe there are some thoughts that you're having about, yeah, some reactions in your mind, like the ways your mind is responding and making meaning out of that and thinking about that. Do you have any sense of what that is? Can you observe out loud? What is your mind saying about this?
Sure. Well, I think it's like kind of this connection between the macro and the micro a little bit, where like you see, you know, you read news articles about issues and then you see big symbols of what that means. And you can think of one specific person who kind of embodies all of that. And you can't necessarily speak to representatives in the way that you can speak to your own family members. And I suppose an observation would be uh,
Or just
uh,
some thoughts that you're having, like, oh, these people want to, I don't know, whatever the judgment is or the,
you
and
know, that's interesting. I think it's like less of a judgment and more of like I wish I could do more to protect people who are vulnerable to different policies that, you know, leave people without
okay.
health care, leave people, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then there's just coming out is a need. One need is to protect people who are vulnerable, wanting care and protection for people who have maybe bigger needs for support, for care, and really wanting that for all people who kind of have that need, those bigger needs. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Feeling a little disappointed that you feel that it feels pretty uncomplicated, but yet so hard to do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feelings of disappointment in your body. What anything else you feel in your body when you focus on that need for people who to feel supported and cared for, maybe that have bigger needs and more sort of vulnerable and on the edge.
Hmm. I guess maybe a feeling of like wanting to get big and be able to
Mm.
protect people, maybe.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So a kind of energy that surges in you to get bigger, something like that.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a little bit, we don't have much time right now, but just a little bit of like listening to this part of you or parts of you that are reacting maybe to the messages or the viewpoints. Yeah. And
Hmm.
what's and a bit of how you're feeling in your body, just dropping attention down, maybe doing that now, just like really allowing your attention to be down in your body and feeling the
Hmm.
disappointment, that kind of expanding energy, this need for protection and care for people who are vulnerable, and maybe letting attention get kind of wide. Uh, there's like kind of going deep into your body and connecting to this, and then there can also be that opening, expanding your attention, that how we're all kind of part of a larger field, sharing in these needs and part of something bigger. Okay. So as you do that, is there a sense of any opening towards empathy for the other? Is there open a willingness to just to understand, not to agree, just to understand?
Mm-hmm.
Is that there?
Yeah. 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 But more of like, I guess like seeing a different way, like if you want to promote empathy towards, like, it's less exclusive. It's less wanting to protect or wanting to be empathetic towards a certain group, and a little bit more expansive it kind of attaches to the already expansive feeling. If that makes sense.
Do you mean like that could include wanting to understand folks that have these other kind of views that are just really disappointing to you? Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess maybe almost like trusting,
Hmm.
trusting that maybe there's some kind of answer that comes from more people than just me, I guess. And that to do that, you have to understand. So if you really do care about wanting to protect people, you have to go through that, maybe a comfortable step, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think so. Yeah, maybe some as you sort of drop into deeper layers of this for you, you kind of get that sense of, oh, like there's lots of different perspectives here, and how could we like hold each other? How could we kind of hold space for one another and somehow work together? Something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that can be really difficult with some of these certain differences of beliefs. So if that, it feels like this, and again, time is really short, but if it is opening a little bit for you, maybe just one, maybe one need you think. What do you think when somebody is holding the views of that sign? What's one need they're trying to meet through these views that maybe you also can relate to? Like something they want, something that's important, that's also important to you deep down. What might be behind some of that rhetoric that that we could all relate to because we all share the same needs at a deep enough level.
Probably protection. They moved.
Same need. Same
Yeah.
need, yeah. Protection.
Yeah. Yeah. They moved feeling, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of political reasons, but feeling like they had to protect their family from different stuff than I feel. But
Right.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. So the beliefs very different, strategies very different, but then and this is often the case in conflict, and you may have experienced that the needs can be very similar or even the same, right? So this need to protect,
Yeah.
and very different, again, very different strategies, but this maybe we can feel that commonality of, oh, this is another human being trying to protect something they find really valuable, and you also wanting to protect what you find so valuable. And that at that level, this need level, we're connected, we're one, we're part of the oneness that is in these as you and me. So how does that feel? Just to focus on that as well as holding, yeah, there's some big differences here that are there, that's real. And there's like this other level maybe where there's a sort of human to human connection.
Feels a little bit more hopeful.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And then if we had time, we could see what action flows from that. Something maybe an image comes into your mind of what to do might be a little different, just having gone through that process. And right, you may have done some version of this with yourself, but there's something about doing it together, like you and I just did, and doing it experientially, not just intellectually, but letting yourself really drop down into your emotions, into your deep needs and our connectedness, and then seeing what arises out of that. So if we had time, we could explore that. But thank you so much, Emma, for just coming forward to do so I could get this demo to happen. And I thought that was lovely in the short time that we had. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, well, please, folks, reach out if you have any other questions, and maybe we'll do another one of these before too long. And yeah, have a great week as dealing with all that we're dealing with personally and in the world. So take care, everybody.